I called my daughter on a quiet Friday night just to wish her an early happy birthday. I was about to hang up when I heard her laugh, light, careless. Then her husband's voice followed. That old fool signed it all. We're finally free. My hand froze around the phone. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. They thought the call had ended. They didn't realize I was still there listening as they celebrated the destruction of my life. And that tiny mistake would unravel everything they had planned. I appreciate you staying with me. Before we dive deeper, comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with you all. Please note, this story includes dramatized elements for entertainment and learning purposes. Any resemblance to real individuals or places is purely coincidental, but the takeaway is meaningful. I'm 68 years old, and over the course of my life, I've constructed more things than I can count. Houses that still stand, bridges that carry traffic every day, a 40-year career built on calculations and concrete. I even believed I had built a strong family, but the most difficult structure I ever designed wasn't made of steel or timber. It was a trap for my own daughter. And it began with a phone call I should have ended. Friday evening, November 15th, 7:30 sharp. I tapped the FaceTime icon on my iPhone, still clumsy with the thing, after decades of preferring graph paper and a sharpened pencil. Emily had insisted on setting it up for me last Christmas. It's simple, Dad, she'd said, guiding my finger across the screen. Just press here. After 2 rings, her face appeared. 38 years old. My daughter. She had Margaret's warm brown eyes and my stubborn jaw. For a second, seeing her smile on that small screen made everything feel ordinary. Hey, Dad, happy early birthday to you too, she teased. Her birthday was that day. Mine wasn't for another month. Happy birthday, sweetheart, I said. How's it going? Busy, she laughed. Brad's cooking, and I'm pretty sure he's burning something. She glanced over her shoulder and grinned. Thanks for the flowers. Your mother always believed November birthdays deserved yellow roses, I replied. Then I added almost casually. Those estate planning papers you brought last week, I signed them. They're on my desk whenever you want to pick them up. Something shifted in her expression. Just for a heartbeat. Too quick to interpret. Perfect, she said smoothly. I'll grab them this weekend. No hurry, I answered. Just thought you should know. There was a loud clatter on her end. I've got to run, dinner's about to turn into charcoal. Love you, Dad. Love you too, honey. She reached toward her screen. I reached toward mine. I thought I hit the red button. Apparently I didn't. The image shrank, but the call didn't disconnect. I set the phone on the arm of Margaret's old recliner and stood to stretch my back. That's when I heard her voice again. But it wasn't meant for me. That old fool signed everything. The tone was light, almost playful, but it wasn't affectionate. We're golden, Emily continued. Next week we move him into Shady Pines, sell the house, and boom, 1.2 million in our pockets. Every muscle in my body locked. My hand gripped the chair so hard my knuckles blanched. Brad's voice followed. You're sure he didn't read the documents? Dad doesn't read anything I hand him, she said with a laugh. He trusts me. Another laugh, clear, amused. The lawyer's ready. We file the guardianship petition Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, he'll be in the nursing home, and we'll be free. Your mom would be proud, Brad added smugly. Finally getting out from under that debt. Emily's voice lowered colder now. He built that house 30 years ago. Always said it would be mine someday. A pause. Looks like someday just arrived. I don't remember lowering myself back into the chair, but suddenly I was sitting in Margaret's seat, staring at nothing, the phone still transmitting their celebration. I should have burst into their house that night. I should have called and confronted them. But I'm an engineer. Engineers don't explode. We analyze. When the line finally went dead, I remained there listening to the house breathe. The faint creak of oak boards, the ticking of old pipes, the subtle groan of settling beams, sounds I'd known for decades. I had poured this foundation myself, wired every outlet, selected every fixture. Every nail and joint carried my fingerprints. This house wasn't an investment. It was evidence that I had done something right in this world. Something durable. Margaret and I raised Emily within these walls. I could still see her at 7 years old, tugging at my sleeve, demanding to know how suspension bridges stayed upright. At 12, clutching her blue ribbon for a science project on structural load distribution. At 20, standing in this living room in a white dress, radiant. "You look just like your mother," I'd whispered that day. Somewhere between that girl and the woman I'd just overheard, something had fractured. I scanned the room. Margaret's recliner. Our 1984 wedding photo on the mantel. The framed blueprints of this house hanging on the wall, the ones I'd labored over until 3 in the morning to make every angle perfect. I taught her to read blueprints, I muttered into the silence. Now she's drafting plans to lock me away. 72 hours. That was the timeline. Monday morning, she would file the guardianship petition. By Monday afternoon, if she succeeded, I'd be inside Shady Pines with no control over my house, my money, or my life. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a name saved for 4 decades. Frank Miller. Retired detective. Friend since 1985 when we'd worked together on a construction fraud investigation. He'd been law enforcement. I'd been the engineer, proving structural negligence. I almost pressed call. Then I stopped. My mind had already shifted into assessment mode. I began running calculations, identifying structural weaknesses, not in steel beams, but in a plan designed against me. Emily had miscalculated. She assumed I was fragile, complacent, that I would sign papers blindly and shuffle quietly wherever she directed. She forgot who she was dealing with. I've spent 50 years evaluating stress loads, anticipating failure points, reinforcing structures before they collapse. And when collapse is unavoidable, orchestrating demolition, so it falls exactly where intended. My hands may tremble more than they once did. My mind does not. It is still sharp enough to detect faulty design, sharp enough to trace every flaw in her scheme. I walked to my study and retrieved the folder of documents I had signed without reading. Page after page of legal language I had trusted solely because my daughter placed it in front of me. Durable power of attorney. Advanced health care directive. I should have examined every clause. But you're supposed to trust your child. I laid the documents down carefully. 72 hours remained. 72 hours to construct something she would never anticipate. I am a civil engineer. We do not panic under pressure. We assess the load. We calculate risk. We design solutions. And in those next 72 hours, I would build the most important structure of my life. A trap precise enough to expose every miscalculation she made. Because she overlooked one essential truth. Never underestimate the man who taught you how to read blueprints. He can read yours too. For the first 60 minutes after the call ended, I didn't move from Margaret's chair. I just sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at the dark screen as if it might contradict what I'd heard. At some point, I realized the audio had been saved. Apparently, if a FaceTime call doesn't disconnect properly, the system stores it something about registering it like a voicemail. I had never known that. I'd never needed to, until that night. I pressed play. Emily's voice filled the room again. Clear, cheerful, cruel. The old fool signed everything. I stopped it halfway through. Waited. Then started it again from the beginning. 3 times I listened. 3 times I hoped there would be some alternate explanation buried between the words. Some context I'd missed. A joke taken out of proportion. Anything. There wasn't. By the 3rd replay, I wasn't hoping anymore. I was evaluating estate planning documents. That was what she'd called them when she showed up the previous Tuesday around lunchtime. She'd come in carrying a folder and wearing that bright, confident smile, the one she used to wear when she brought home straight A's from school. Just routine stuff, Dad, she'd said lightly. Power of attorney, healthcare directive, in case something ever happens. I understood now. She had been arranging the something herself. I pushed myself up from the chair and walked into my study. The folder was exactly where I'd left it, resting neatly on the desk. 6 pages. Stapled cleanly in the upper left corner. I'd signed the last page, without reading the first 5. Why wouldn't I? She was my daughter. I sat down and began turning pages carefully. Page 1, durable power of attorney. The language was dense, legal, the kind of wording I normally would have studied line by line. Page 4, my signature, blue ink, distinctly mine. I recognized the tall way I formed the H in Coleman, an old habit from decades of signing blueprints on construction sites. But something felt wrong. I lifted page 1 toward the desk lamp. The spacing between the lines seemed tighter than on page 4. The header at the top, estate planning documents, used a slightly different font than the body text beneath it. Subtle differences. But I've spent my life noticing subtle differences. She had placed page 4 in front of me, had me sign it, then attached different pages above it. My signature was authentic. The document it validated was not. I lowered the papers, slowly setting them on the desk, as though they were unstable material that might detonate if handled roughly. Shady Pines. Brad had said the name so casually in the recording. The nursing facility beyond the county line. I remembered reading about it in the Oregonian the previous year, an investigation into financial exploitation of elderly residents. Nothing had come of it. Places like that rarely close. They simply change administrators and continue operating. That's where they planned to send me. Not because I was ill, because I was inconvenient. Monday morning, Emily had said, "We file the guardianship petition." I glanced at the calendar pinned to the wall. Friday. That left me 72 hours. The house shifted around me as the temperature dropped outside. The old timber beams contracted softly. The floorboards murmured under their own weight. I'd heard those sounds every night for 30 years. Tonight they sounded different, as if the house itself were waiting to see what I would do. My thoughts drifted to Margaret, 5 years gone that March. Cancer had taken her quickly, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Emily had moved back home during those final months. She'd slept in the guest room, organized medications, helped coordinate hospice visits. At the time, I believed I was watching a devoted daughter. Now a different possibility crept in. Had she been studying the system back then, learning how medical decisions were documented, how guardianship worked, how vulnerable an aging parent could become on paper? The thought made my stomach tighten. I pressed play again. 1.2 million in our pockets. Emily's voice carried excitement, anticipation. Finally getting out from under that debt, Brad replied. There it was. Debt. No misinterpretation. No misunderstanding. Just motive. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. There were only 3 viable paths forward. First option, confront them immediately. Drive over to their house in the morning. Play the recording. Demand they abandon the plan. Problem, they would know I knew. They would adapt. Speed up the filing. Request emergency guardianship. Claim I was unstable or paranoid. I would lose the element of surprise. Second option, call the police that very night. Report attempted fraud. Problem, what crime had technically occurred, yet I had signed the documents. My signature was genuine. Even if pages were swapped, I would need forensic verification. The recording alone might not hold in court. I did not yet possess sufficient evidence. I would be reacting too early. Third option, do what I have done for half a century. Assess, design, construct. In my career, every structure began the same way. You determine the load it must bear. Identify stress points. Select materials strong enough to withstand pressure. Reinforce where necessary. Anticipate failure before it happens. This situation required the same methodology, except the structure I would build would not consist of concrete or steel. It would be built from proof, from timing, from strategy. 72 hours. 72 hours until Monday morning. 72 hours to become someone I never expected to be. A father who fights back. I reached for my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found a name that had been in my life longer than my marriage. Frank Miller. We'd met in 1985 on a construction fraud investigation. He had been the detective assigned to the case. I was the engineer proving that a contractor had substituted inferior rebar in a bridge foundation. We'd bonded over site inspections, black coffee, and arguments about load tolerances. He retired from Portland PD 8 years ago, but we never stopped meeting for lunch once a month. If there was one person capable of looking at this situation clearly without panic, it was Frank. I hesitated for only a second before pressing call. It rang twice. Walt Frank's voice answered, already alert. "It's 10 o'clock. Everything okay?" I glanced at the scattered documents on my desk, the saved recording on my phone, the quiet living room where only an hour earlier I'd heard my daughter discuss disposing of me like excess inventory. "No," I said calmly. "Everything is not okay." There was a pause on the line. "What's going on?" I inhaled slowly, searching for language that didn't sound insane. "My daughter is trying to erase me," I said finally. "Not with violence, with paperwork." Silence. "I've got 72 hours before she files a guardianship petition and locks me in a nursing home," I continued. "I need you here." Another brief pause. Then Frank's voice came back steady as ever. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. I ended the call and set the phone down. The clock on the wall read 10:07 p.m. 71 hours and 53 minutes remaining. For the first time since I'd overheard that call, something inside me steadied. Engineers don't panic under structural stress. We calculate. And I had just begun. Frank's truck rolled into my driveway at exactly 11:03 p.m. The sweep of his headlights slid across the living room walls, briefly illuminating Margaret's framed photo before fading. A second later, I heard the unmistakable diesel rumble of his old Ford, the same battered pickup he'd been driving since the day he retired. Some men upgrade when they step away from the job. Frank never saw the point. He was knocking before I reached the door. I opened it, and there he stood. 70 years old. Lean as ever. Gray hair cropped short military style. His posture still straight, still alert. And his eyes, those cop's eyes, taking in the porch, the windows, the street behind me, in a single sweep. "Walt," he said. "Show me." No greeting, no small talk. That was Frank. I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit, didn't remove his jacket. I handed him my phone already cued to the recording. He stood in the center of my living room and listened without interrupting. His face didn't move. Not once. If you didn't know him, you'd think he felt nothing at all. When the audio ended, he remained silent for a full 30 seconds. Then he exhaled slowly. "This is elder abuse," he said flatly. "Calculated, organized. This didn't start last week, Walt. This has been in motion for months." Months, I repeated, though part of me already knew he was right. He handed the phone back. "You don't draft a guardianship petition overnight. There are consultations, paper trails, medical documentation. Somebody's been laying groundwork." He held out his hand. "Let me see the paperwork." I retrieved the folder from my study and brought it to the kitchen table. Frank pulled a pair of reading glasses from his jacket pocket and spread the pages out under the overhead light. He leaned over them the way he used to lean over crime scene evidence, careful, patient, precise. "Signatures authentic," he said, tapping page 4. "No question. That's yours." "I know, but look here." He slid page 2 slightly forward. "See how the text alignment shifts. The density of the toner's different. Whoever did this scanned the signature page and printed new content to attach above it. Same paper stock, different print pattern." I'd noticed the font inconsistency. Frank saw the printer's fingerprint. "Can that be proven?" I asked. "With a forensic document examiner, absolutely. In court, strong case." He removed his glasses and set them down. "But forensic analysis takes time. And you don't have time." "Monday morning," I said. 9 o'clock. He nodded once. "If a judge signs off that afternoon, you lose everything. Financial control, medical authority, property rights. You become legally dependent overnight." He pulled out a chair and sat down. Gestured for me to sit opposite him. "We've got 72 hours, he continued. "We can't stop them from filing, but we can be ready when they do." "Ready how?" "We build leverage." He raised 3 fingers. "First, irrefutable proof of forgery. One we're already working on, I said. Second motive. Judges look at intent. Why now? Why the urgency? If they're desperate financially, that matters. Brad works in real estate, I said slowly. Could be cash flow issues. I'll start digging in the morning, Frank replied. County records, civil filings, business licenses, credit history. If he's underwater, it'll surface. And third, I asked. An insider, Frank said plainly. Somebody close enough to hear what they're planning next. The answer came to me instantly. Noah. Frank's eyes sharpened. Emily's son. My grandson, I said. 16. Good head on his shoulders. Wants to go into engineering. He's here most weekends. We work on projects together. Frank leaned back in his chair. 16 is old enough to know right from wrong. And old enough to be loyal to his parents, I added. Exactly. We both sat with that for a moment. I thought about last Saturday. Noah at the dining table carefully assembling a model bridge for physics class. We'd debated tension forces versus compression loads for nearly an hour. He'd stayed for dinner if you could call frozen pizza dinner. I think he'd help, I said quietly. You think, Frank corrected. But you don't know. He stood and walked toward the window, glancing out into the dark backyard. If you tell him too much and he runs home to his mother, this accelerates. They'll push for emergency guardianship. You'll lose your timeline. So we don't tell him everything, I said. Exactly. You invite him over tomorrow. Normal visit, homework, science project. You gauge him. Has he noticed anything unusual, any strange conversations? You assess. Assess. The word landed with weight. Engineering language. Frank always knew how to speak mine. I joined him at the window. Margaret's garden was visible even in the dim yard light, overgrown now, but still recognizable. Rose bushes she'd planted herself. Lavender lining the fence. Tomatoes she used to fuss over every July. Emily had helped her plant those roses once. I could see it in my mind, the two of them kneeling in the dirt, laughing hands stained with soil. Was that girl gone, or buried under something darker? Margaret's been gone 5 years, I said quietly. Emily came home those last months. Slept in the guest room. Organized hospice. She held her mother's hand when she passed. I remember Frank said. I was there at the funeral. She seemed sincere, I said. My throat tightened despite myself. Like she cared. Maybe she did, Frank replied evenly. Or maybe she was learning. I continued. Learning how medical directives work. How power of attorney functions. Figuring out the system. Frank didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer. People evolve, Walt. Sometimes for the better, sometimes not. And sometimes we just finally see what was always there. I turned away from the window. I need to know who she is, I said. The daughter who planted roses with her mother, or the woman who's trying to liquidate her inheritance early. We'll get clarity, Frank said, checking his watch. But first you need rest. Tomorrow I investigate Brad Whitaker. You contact Noah. Keep it casual. No accusations. No talk of his parents. I nodded once. Understood. Frank walked toward the door, then stopped. One more thing he said without turning around. If Noah's loyalty isn't where you think it is, if he tips them off, you're done. They'll move fast. Emergency petition. You won't have room to maneuver. I'm aware, I said. He faced me fully then. Make sure you're right about that boy. I will. He left without another word. The truck's engine faded down the street moments later. I remained standing in the living room long after the headlights disappeared. The house creaked softly as it always did at night. Familiar, solid. I was about to place my future in the hands of a 16-year-old, a boy I loved, a boy caught between his parents and his grandfather. If I was wrong, the consequences would be irreversible. If I was right, he might be the only reason I survive what's coming. I stared at the darkened window, my reflection faint in the glass. Either Noah would help me hold the foundation steady, or he would unknowingly pull the last support beam out from under me. Saturday morning, I was awake before dawn, staring at the ceiling long before the alarm would have gone off. 6 o'clock. I hadn't seen that hour voluntarily in months. Sleep was impossible, knowing Frank was out there pulling threads while I sat in this house waiting for news. I got up, brewed coffee, and stood at the kitchen counter listening to it drip. The clock ticked louder than usual. Every 10 minutes I checked my phone, even though I knew investigations don't unfold in 10-minute increments. At exactly noon it rang. Walt. Frank's voice was steady, controlled the tone he used when a puzzle had clicked into place. We've got leverage. I didn't sit. Tell me. Brad Whitaker is upside down. Way upside down. How bad, I asked. Bad enough to make a desperate man creative. I could hear papers shifting on his end. Credit card balances $124,000. That's spread across 6 separate cards. Business loans tied to a failed real estate venture, $723,000. Total outstanding debt, $847,000. I lowered myself slowly into a chair and set my coffee down with deliberate care. Nearly $1 million. What's his income, I asked. $68,000 annually. Mid-tier real estate agent. There's no mathematical universe where that services $847,000 in debt. He's juggling payments, moving balances, stalling lenders. He's been patching holes for at least 2 years. So if my house sells for $1.2 million, it wipes out everything Frank finished, clears his liabilities, and leaves them roughly $350,000 to reset their lives. I exhaled slowly. The numbers lined up too cleanly. That's not the part that concerns me most, Frank added. There's more. I called in a favor at the bureau. Had someone quietly run Brad's name? In 2019, he was investigated for real estate fraud. Allegations targeting older homeowners, convincing them to sell below market value, then flipping properties for profit. 3 formal complaints, and investigation fizzled. Insufficient evidence. But the pattern exists. Frank paused. This isn't his first attempt at exploiting someone older. My grip tightened around the phone. He's practiced. He's tested the waters before. This time he married into a cleaner opportunity. We both let that hang in the air. When the call ended, I stared at my phone for several seconds before remembering the message I'd sent Noah earlier that morning. You free this afternoon? Want to show you something interesting in physics? He had replied within minutes. Yes, I'll bike over around 1. Told Mom I'm staying at Jake's this weekend. I read that last sentence again. Told Mom I'm staying at Jake's. Noah had lied to Emily without prompting. I hadn't suggested it. I hadn't even hinted. It could have been typical teenage maneuvering, or it could have meant something else. I didn't speculate. I walked, not aimlessly, methodically. I moved through the house the way I would walk a structure before renovation, reacquainting myself with every detail. The living room wall, red brick, I laid by hand over 3 summers in the 90s. Emily had been 10, then 11, then 12 during those months. She'd passed me bricks and asked why mortar ratios mattered. The staircase, solid oak. 3 coats of varnish applied on my knees. Margaret had chosen the stain. Emily used to slide down that banister until she declared herself too grown up. The kitchen remodeled in 1987 when Margaret was pregnant. I'd knocked out a wall myself, installed the cabinetry, laid tile 1 square at a time. This house wasn't a financial asset. It was a timeline. 30 years of labor. 40 years of marriage. Every echo of the woman I loved and the daughter I raised. If Emily believed I would surrender it without resistance, she had miscalculated who her father was. At 12:40, movement outside caught my eye. A bicycle turning into the driveway. Noah. I opened the door before he reached it. Hey, Grandpa. He grinned, open, uncomplicated. 16. All long limbs and unfinished angles. Band t-shirt. Jeans worn at the knees by design. Glasses similar to the ones I wore at his age. He carried my younger face. Good timing, I said. Come in. He leaned his bike against the porch railing and stepped inside, dropping his backpack by the door. So what's the physics challenge? He asked eagerly. Something with torque. I almost smiled. Actually, I said, gesturing toward the couch, I need to talk to you first. Something in my tone shifted the air. His expression changed instantly. Teenagers may act careless, but they sense gravity when it enters a room. He sat down slowly. This was the moment Frank had warned me about. The pivot point. I was about to measure where my grandson stood. If I misjudged him, if he reported this conversation back home, Emily and Brad would accelerate. Emergency petition. Claims of paranoia. A narrative that I was unstable. By Monday afternoon, I would be sitting in Shady Pines while this house hit the market. But if I read him correctly, Grandpa Noah's voice was cautious now. Is something wrong? I studied him carefully. This boy who spent weekends here because he wanted to, who argued with me about structural integrity for fun, who had chosen this morning to tell his mother he was somewhere else. I need to ask you something important, I said evenly, and I need honesty. Even if it's uncomfortable. He nodded once. Have you noticed anything unusual at home lately? I asked. Your parents acting different. Having conversations they stop when you walk in. Talking about plans you don't fully understand. The reaction was immediate. Not exaggerated, not confused. Recognition. His posture stiffened. His jaw tightened slightly. Noah wasn't guessing. He knew, and in that instant, I understood that whatever I said next would determine whether I gained an ally, or confirmed that I was truly alone. I thought the hard part would be hearing my daughter plot against me. Turns out the hard part is sitting across from my 16-year-old grandson, wondering if I'm about to ruin his life by telling him the truth. Grandpa, can I ask you something about physics? Noah leans forward, elbows on his knees, exactly the way I used to sit when I was drafting bridge plans at the kitchen table. See, my teacher says Newton's first law is just about inertia, but isn't it really about resistance to change? I blink. For a moment, I forget about the forged documents, the nursing home, the 72-hour countdown. This is what I miss most about Margaret. She used to say I came alive when someone asked me to explain how the world worked. You're smarter than your teacher, I tell him. Newton's first law isn't just physics, it's philosophy. An object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. That's not just about motion, it's about systems, about equilibrium. You know what equilibrium means? Noah nods, eyes bright. Balance. Right. And you know what breaks equilibrium? Force. External force, I correct. Something from outside the system, like... I pause, choosing my words carefully. Like when someone tries to move you out of your own house. Noah's face changes. The brightness fades. He glances at the front door, then back at me. We talk for 30 minutes. I walk him through all three laws: inertia, acceleration, action, and reaction. He asks good questions. He reminds me of myself at that age, hungry for answers, impatient with vague explanations. When we finish, I pour him a glass of water and sit back down. So, I say, keeping my voice light. How's school? How's your mom? Noah takes a long drink, sets the glass down, carefully centering it on the coaster. She's been asking me weird questions. What kind of questions? About you. He won't meet my eyes. Like, do you forget things a lot? Do you repeat yourself? Do you ever get confused about what day it is? My chest tightens, but I keep my face neutral. And what do you tell her? I told her no, because it's true. You don't forget anything. He looks up now, frustrated. But she keeps asking. And last week she told me I should start writing things down. Like if you ever do forget something, I should make a note of it. For your health, she said. I nod slowly. Did she say why? She said it's normal for people your age, that we need to keep track just in case. Noah's hands twist together. But Grandpa, you're not sick. You remember everything. You remember the exact date you poured the foundation for this house. You remember Mom's middle school teachers. You even remember the name of that dog we had when I was 5. Biscuit, I say quietly. Yeah, Biscuit. Noah's voice cracks a little. So why is she acting like you're losing your mind? I stand up, walk to the shelf where I keep my old tape recorder, the one I used for site inspections back in the 80s. I've transferred the audio from my phone to this device, old school, harder to trace. I press play. Emily's voice fills the room. Cold, calculated. The guardianship petition goes in Monday morning. Once the judge sees the medical records, it's done. We move him to Shady Pines, sell the house, clear the debt. 48 hours, Brad. 48 hours, and we're free. I watch Noah's face go pale. He stares at the recorder like it's a weapon. That's Mom. I know. She's talking about putting you in a home, selling this house. I know. Noah stands up so fast his chair scrapes backward. That's insane. You don't need a nursing home. You don't need a guardian. This is... He stops, breathing hard. This is fraud. This is lying. Yeah, I say. It is. He turns to me and I see at the exact moment the pieces click together in his head. The questions. The notebook. She wanted me to lie about you. She wanted me to make up stories about you being confused. Fabricated evidence, I confirm. If I ever end up in court, she'll pull out that notebook. She'll put you on the stand and ask you to testify that I'm mentally incompetent. Noah's hands ball into fists. I won't do it. I know you won't. I walk over, put a hand on his shoulder. But I need more than that, Noah. I need your help. He looks at me wary now. What kind of help? I reach into my pocket and pull out an old flip phone, the kind nobody uses anymore. The kind that doesn't connect to the family plan, doesn't show up on anyone's account. I bought it this morning with cash. I need you to be my eyes and ears, I say. Your parents talk when you're around. They think you're just a kid, so they don't watch what they say. I need you to record those conversations. I need you to send them to me. Noah takes the phone, turns it over in his hands. You want me to spy on my own parents. I want you to help me protect myself. I keep my voice steady even though my heart is hammering. Noah, I built this house with my own hands. I raised your mother in this house. I took care of your grandmother in this house until the day she passed. This isn't just property, it's my life. And they're trying to take it. Not because I'm sick, not because I need help, because they're in debt and they see me as a solution. He's quiet for a long time. Then, what if they find the phone? I hide it. Keep it off unless you're recording. Send the files to this email address. I hand him a slip of paper. Delete them right after. Don't text me, don't call, just the recordings. What if I get caught? Or you won't, I lie. And if you do, I'll take the blame. I'll say I forced you. He looks at me, and I see fear in his eyes, but I also see something else. Determination. The same stubborn set to his jaw that Margaret used to have when she decided something was worth fighting for. Okay, he says, I'll do it. At 4 o'clock, Noah gets on his bike and rides home. I watch him disappear down the street, and for the first time in 2 days, I feel something close to hope and something close to shame. I've just turned my grandson into a spy. I've asked a 16-year-old to lie to his parents to sneak around to risk his safety for my sake. Margaret would have hated this. She always said families should protect each other, not manipulate each other. But then again, Margaret never had to fight her own daughter. At 4:15, my phone rings. Frank, I found what you need, he says. Come to my house tonight, 7 o'clock, and Richard, bring a strong stomach. What I dug up on Brad is worse than we thought. I hang up and stare at the recorder still sitting on the coffee table. Newton's third law: for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Emily pushed. Now I'm pushing back. Frank's house always smells the same stale, coffee, warm electronics, and that faint chemical scent of printer ink. When I step inside at exactly 7, he's already set up at the dining table. Papers are fanned out in precise stacks, arranged the way evidence would be displayed before an indictment. He doesn't greet me. "Shut the door, Walt," he says evenly. "And sit down." I close the door behind me. I don't sit. "What did you find?" Frank finally looks up. In 4 decades of knowing him, I've seen him deliver bad news to widows, to business owners, to men who thought they were untouchable. He never dramatizes. Tonight, though, there's anger in his eyes. "Walt," he says carefully, "Emily didn't stop at the financial documents." My stomach tightens. "She created medical records." For a second, the words don't register. Then the room feels like it shifts slightly beneath my feet. I steady myself on the back of a chair. "What do you mean, created?" Frank slides a thick folder toward me. 6 separate consultations. March through November. All logged under your name. Different clinics around the city. I open the folder. March. Memory clinic evaluation. Notes indicate confusion, short-term memory issues. May neurology consult. Mentions disorientation and difficulty tracking time. July. Psychiatry assessment. Early cognitive decline suspected. September. Follow-up. Worsening symptoms. October. Increased concern. Recommendation for monitoring. November 2 weeks ago. Dr. Patricia Brennan advises immediate placement in assisted living. My hands tremble as I read through each page. "I've never stepped foot in these offices," I say quietly. "I know you haven't." Frank leans forward. "She used the forged power of attorney. Contacted the clinics herself. Told them you were too confused to attend in person. Arranged phone consultations. They documented based on what she reported. They never examined me. No in-person evaluation. They took her statements as caregiver observations. It happens more often than you'd think." I lower myself into the chair because my legs no longer feel reliable. "All 6 calls originated from her phone," Frank continues. "But the patient listed is you. On paper, it shows a steady 6-month decline." I close the folder slowly. "She constructed a medical history," I say. "Layer by layer," Frank replies grimly. I stare at the documents. Each page carefully worded. Timelines aligned. Symptoms escalating at just the right pace. She didn't rush. She designed it. "I need to go home," I say. Frank doesn't argue. The drive back feels shorter than usual. When I pull into my driveway, the house looks unchanged. Quiet. Ordinary. I walk past the front door and around to the side yard instead. The green trash bin is still out. Collection isn't until Monday. I lift the lid and start sorting through what's inside. Takeout bags, newspaper inserts. Then I see them. 6 white envelopes. Barely crumpled. I pull them out one by one. Appointment reminders. Memory clinic, March 15th. Neurology, May the 8th. Psychiatry, July 20th. Each addressed to me. Each appointment I never attended. She must have intercepted them from the mailbox before I ever noticed. Kept them hidden. Only tossed them recently because the plan was nearly complete. I carry the envelopes inside and lay them on the kitchen table under the light. They're in decent condition. No water damage, no heavy creases. She'd handled them carefully. 6 months ago, she started calling more often. "Dad, you seem tired. Are you sure you're remembering things clearly? You repeated that story twice." I thought she was concerned. She was rehearsing a script. When I didn't falter, when I remembered dates, names, details, she simply created decline on paper. I push the envelopes aside and walk upstairs. Margaret's jewelry box rests on the dresser exactly where it has for decades. I built it myself from cherry and maple with a velvet-lined interior. I open it. Pearl earrings, a silver bracelet, necklaces gently tangled, and an empty space where her wedding ring once lay. Last summer, Emily asked to borrow it. Said she wanted to have it appraised for insurance purposes. I handed it to her without hesitation. She never returned it. I take out my phone and search quietly. Portland pawnshop listings. Diamond solitaire. 1.5 carats. It doesn't take long. Selwood Estate jewelry listing. 1.5 carat yellow gold solitaire. Sold July last year for $3,200. The description is unmistakable. She sold it. Her mother's wedding ring. The one I saved for half a year to afford in 1980. The ring Margaret wore every single day for 40 years. Emily sold it over 12 months ago. I set the phone down gently. No shouting, no breaking things, just a spreading coldness inside my chest. This wasn't panic. It wasn't a sudden financial crisis. It was a long-term plan, a structure drafted carefully. At 9 o'clock, I call Frank again. We need legal counsel, I say. It's Saturday night, Walt. You know someone who owes you. Call them. I'll cover whatever it costs. Frank exhales. Martin Blackwell, estate attorney. We worked together years ago. He still takes my calls. Can he move quickly? If I lean on him tomorrow morning. Lean, I say. We have less than 40 hours before that petition is filed. I want something in place before Monday. There's a pause. What's your angle? Frank asks. I glance at the 6 envelopes on the kitchen table, at Margaret's jewelry box upstairs. I'm thinking that if Emily believes she's constructed something solid, I say slowly, she should understand what happens when a structure is built on compromised supports. Frank is quiet. Then I'll reach Martin. Be ready early. I hang up. The house is silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I pour another cup of coffee, Folgers, same brand I've been drinking since the 70s. My body is running on almost no sleep. 2 hours maybe since Friday night. Adrenaline and caffeine are carrying me now. Emily taught me something tonight. She showed me that affection has boundaries, that shared blood doesn't ensure shared loyalty, that someone you raised can look at you and calculate value instead of memory. But she overlooked something fundamental. I am not simply her father. I am an engineer, and engineers are trained to recognize weaknesses before collapse. I rinse the coffee cup and switch off the kitchen light. Upstairs, I close Margaret's jewelry box, carefully running my thumb over the smooth wood. I should have protected it, I whisper into the quiet room. I can't undo what's gone, but I can defend what remains. And starting tomorrow morning, I will. For the next 30 minutes, I sit at the kitchen table and sort through everything Frank brought me. I arrange the forged medical reports beside the appointment reminder cards I pulled from the trash. I line up the fraudulent power of attorney behind them. March, May, July, September, October, November. Chronological order? It feels less like paperwork and more like a structural diagram, an inspection laid out beam by beam. If you step back far enough, you can see the architecture of the lie, the escalation, the precision, the deliberate pacing. By 9:45 p.m., I have everything organized into neat stacks. The doorbell rings. I don't jump. I don't need to. I know who it is. The man standing on my porch looks like he belongs in a courtroom even on a Saturday night. Early 60s. Silver hair, pressed vest and tie. He carries a leather briefcase that's seen decades of negotiations. Mr. Coleman, he says, extending his hand. Martin Blackwell. Frank mentioned you might need immediate assistance. He said you owed him, I reply. A faint smile crosses his face. He's correct. I step aside and let him in. 30 seconds later, Frank's truck pulls up again, and he joins us at the kitchen table. Martin doesn't waste time on pleasantries. He opens his briefcase, removes a yellow legal pad, and studies me carefully before speaking. Frank forwarded your documents earlier, he says. What your daughter has orchestrated qualifies as systematic elder exploitation. Forged authority, fabricated medical decline, intent to obtain financial control. He pauses. The difficulty is timing. If she files that guardianship petition Monday morning and convinces a judge she gains immediate legal control over your property and accounts, including this residence. So we neutralize that, I say. Martin taps his pen thoughtfully. We remove the property from your name entirely. He rotates the legal pad toward me. A rectangular box is sketched in the center. Inside it, irrevocable living trust. Arrows extend outward to my name, to Noah's name, and to the address of this house. This is the mechanism, Martin explains. You transfer title of the house into an irrevocable trust. I serve as trustee administrative authority. Noah becomes beneficiary, the eventual inheritor. The house is no longer legally yours. You retain residency, of course. Nothing changes operationally. But on record, your daughter cannot access, sell, or leverage it. I study the diagram, and if she tries to challenge it, she can file objections, Martin says. But irrevocable trusts are intentionally difficult to unwind. Once executed, even you cannot reverse it. That's the cost of protection. Frank leans forward. Walt, you understand what that means? You're placing the asset beyond your own reach. Permanently. I look at Noah's name on the page, a 16-year-old boy. Smart, loyal, but still a boy. If he chose to align with his parents one day, I would have no recourse. But I remember his reaction earlier. The shock, the anger, the refusal to lie. Noah won't turn, I say quietly. You're certain, Frank presses. I've trusted concrete and steel for 40 years, I reply. Tonight I'm trusting character. Martin studies me for a long moment, then nods. Very well. He retrieves a laptop and a compact printer from his briefcase. I'll draft the trust immediately. Oregon allows electronic filing around the clock. If we execute this tonight, it will be recorded before dawn. How much, I ask? He gives a restrained smile. Frank and I settled something years ago. Consider this repayment. For the next hour, the kitchen fills with the sound of keys clicking and printer rollers advancing page after page. Martin walks us through each section as it's completed. Grantor definitions, trustee, authority, beneficiary, designation, property, description, successor provisions. The language is dense, legal, layered with contingencies. But the essence is simple. I am relinquishing ownership to prevent theft. At precisely 11 o'clock, Martin slides the finalized document toward me. Sign here, and here, and here. Irrevocable living trust executed. November 16th, 2024. I pick up the pen. My hand does not tremble. I sign 3 times. Martin witnesses the signatures, scans the pages, and types rapidly. Filed, he says after a moment. The trust will register overnight. By morning, this property is legally held by the trust. And Monday I ask, if Emily files, she'll discover the asset she intended to control is no longer yours. She will not be pleased. Frank rises from his chair, stretching his back. Anger causes errors, he says. Martin closes his briefcase and stands. You've fortified your foundation, Mr. Coleman. Whatever happens next, she cannot touch this house. After they leave, the house feels quieter than before. I move to the back window and look into the yard. The swing set still stands near the old oak tree. Weathered, chains rusted, but intact. I built it when Emily was 5. I can still hear her laughter. Higher, Daddy, higher. Back then I pushed her upward. Now she's applying force in the opposite direction. I turn away and head upstairs. My body feels hollowed out, 3 cups of coffee, 2 hours of sleep across 2 days. But exhaustion hasn't reached my mind yet. At 11:30, my phone vibrates. Noah. Grandpa, Mom, and Brad were just talking. She said a doctor is coming tomorrow morning to evaluate you. Brad said they need paperwork before filing Monday. Should I record? I don't hesitate. Yes. Record everything. The reply sends instantly. I set the phone down and sit at the edge of the bed. A physician coming here. An in-person assessment to validate the fabricated record. Emily is reinforcing her structure, layering credibility on top of fraud. But she's not the only one reinforcing. The trust is filed. The house is protected. And now documentation will move in both directions. I lean back slowly and close my eyes, not to sleep but to think. Newton's principles return to me. Force applied. Resistance increased. System stabilizing under pressure. Tomorrow morning, a doctor will walk into this house believing he's evaluating cognitive decline. Tomorrow morning, my daughter will assume she controls the narrative. But she misjudged one element. I am still fully present, still fully aware, and still capable of counter-design. The house creaks softly as it settles for the night. So do I. And tomorrow, when that outside force arrives at my door, it will meet something far more stable than it expects. Frank arrives at exactly 10 o'clock Sunday morning, looking like he hasn't slept or cared since Friday. His shirt is wrinkled beyond salvation, his gray hair sticking up in uneven directions, and there's a dark coffee stain splashed across one knee of his jeans. I raise an eyebrow as I open the door. "What happened to you?" He steps inside without answering immediately, then gestures at himself. "This," he says flatly, "is what you're going to look like in about 4 hours." I beg your pardon, confused, disheveled. A man who can't keep track of his own clothes, much less his finances. He walks straight past me into the living room and drops a canvas bag onto the couch. "Walt, listen carefully. That doctor coming here this afternoon, she's not evaluating you, she's certifying you. There's a difference." I close the door slowly. Certifying me for what? Incompetence. Frank turns to face me. "Emily's not bringing her over for tea. She's bringing her to create documentation that you can't manage your own affairs. And if that documentation exists, it reinforces everything else she's fabricated." I sit down because the weight of the word lands heavily. "So what do you want me to do?" I ask. "I want you to give them exactly what they expect," Frank says calmly, "but on our terms." He unzips the canvas bag and pulls out a wrinkled button-down shirt. It looks like it's been balled up for a week. "Put this on. Button it wrong. Make it look like you dressed without understanding how. You want me to perform. I want you to survive," he corrects. For the next 2 hours, Frank turns my living room into a rehearsal space. Costume comes first. The shirt is old and faded 2 sizes too large. Frank insists I button it unevenly, skip a button near the collar, so one side droops lower than the other. He hands me loose jeans that sag at the ankles. "Tuck it in crooked," he says, adjusting the fabric himself. One side tighter than the other. People don't notice perfection. They notice inconsistency. Next comes movement. "Slow down," he instructs as I cross the room. Shorter steps. Slight shuffle. Let your eyes wander occasionally, like you've lost track of why you entered a room. He demonstrates exaggerating slightly. "Confused people don't sway," he continues. "They hesitate." Speech rehearsal follows. "Hesitate before answering," Frank says. Repeat the question back. Ask what day it is. Ask twice. Maybe 3 times. But don't overdo it. It has to feel natural. We run scenarios like actors blocking a scene. "Mr. Coleman, what's today's date?" Frank asks, adopting a clinical tone. I stare past him toward the window. "Today, it's Saturday, isn't it? Or Sunday, I get those mixed up sometimes." "Better," Frank says, but slower. Confusion is searching, not slurring. He peppers me with questions. "Who's the president? What did you have for breakfast? What's your address?" I intentionally stumble, mix details, ask him to repeat himself. Pause mid-sentence as if losing the thread. Each answer feels like a small humiliation. I've spent decades being precise, being reliable, being the man people turned to when numbers mattered. Now I'm rehearsing incompetence in my own home. At 11:30, my phone vibrates. "Noah, Grandpa just heard Mom on the phone. She said, 'Dr. Brennan, you're coming at 2, right? We need a certificate saying he's not competent. $5,000, like we agreed.'" I recorded it. I show the message to Frank. "5,000, he mutters. "That's not a standard evaluation fee. That's a bribe." He nods once. "We've got confirmation she's paying. But we need what happens in this room documented too." He reaches into the canvas bag again and removes 3 small devices. The first looks like an ordinary wall clock, except when he flips it over, there's a tiny lens embedded behind the 12. "Wide-angle camera," he says. "We'll mount it behind where you're sitting." The second device is a simple picture frame. Another hidden camera. This goes on the bookshelf. It'll capture the doctor's face clearly. The third is smaller than a matchbox, a wireless microphone. "Clip this inside your shirt pocket," he instructs. It'll record everything within 15 feet. For 20 minutes, Frank moves around the room with methodical efficiency. He adjusts angles, tests lighting, checks audio levels on his phone. I watch the live feed, 2 camera views of my living room, crisp and clear. Rule number 1, Frank says when he's done. Stay in character. Even if she says something that makes you furious, you don't break. I nod. At 1 o'clock, I go upstairs to change. I stand in the bathroom staring at the wrinkled shirt hanging from my shoulders. One side tucked too deep, the other sagging. My reflection looks tired. Not incompetent, just tired. I've built bridges that span rivers, designed retaining walls that have outlasted storms, mentored younger engineers who now run their own firms. And here I am, deliberately misbuttoning my shirt to avoid losing everything. Is this what defense looks like at 68? I close my eyes and hear Emily's voice from the recording. 48 hours and we're free. No. This isn't surrender. It's counter-design. I head back downstairs. Frank gives me a final once-over. Remember, he says quietly, you're not acting crazy. You're acting confused. At 1:45 p.m., a black Mercedes pulls to the curb. I see it through the front window. A tall blonde woman steps out of the driver's side. Late 50s, professional posture. She carries a medical bag and moves with quiet authority. Dr. Brennan. The passenger door opens. Emily emerges. She says something to the doctor on the sidewalk. They exchange a few words, then walk toward the porch. Frank slips into the kitchen out of sight, but within monitoring range of the cameras. The devices are recording. The microphone hums faintly against my chest. I lower myself into Margaret's old chair and adjust the crooked shirt one last time. My hands rest loosely on my knees. The doorbell rings. For a moment I think about the swing set in the yard, about Margaret's jewelry box upstairs, about Noah trusting me. Then I let my shoulders sag slightly and allow my eyes to drift unfocused toward the hallway. The show begins, and this time I control the stage. I stand up slowly, shuffle to the door, and pull it open. Dr. Patricia Brennan is shorter than I expected, maybe 5'6", with dyed blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. She's wearing a navy blazer over a white blouse, carrying a leather medical bag that looks expensive. Her smile is professional, practiced. Behind her, Emily stands on the porch step, hands clasped together, face arranged into an expression of concern. "Dad," Emily says softly, stepping forward. "This is Dr. Brennan. Remember I mentioned her last week? I scheduled a health checkup for you." I let my eyes drift between them, then back to Emily, like I'm trying to place the memory. "A doctor? Did you tell me?" "It's okay, Mr. Coleman." Dr. Brennan says, her voice smooth and reassuring. "May I come in?" I step aside, shuffle back toward the living room. They follow me in. Emily closes the door behind them. Dr. Brennan sits on the couch, sets her bag beside her, and pulls out a clipboard. Emily stays standing near the doorway, arms crossed, watching. "Mr. Coleman," Dr. Brennan begins. "Can you tell me what day it is today?" I pause. Let my eyes wander to the window like I'm searching for the answer outside. "Today, it's Saturday, isn't it? Or Sunday." She writes something on her clipboard. "And do you remember my name?" I look at her, squint a little. "Your name is Doctor." "I'm sorry, I've forgotten." More writing. "Can you tell me your home address?" I hesitate, then recite the street name correctly, but give the wrong house number off by 20. She doesn't correct me, just writes it down. "Who's the current president, Mr. Coleman?" I frown like I'm reaching deep into my memory. "Oh, that's Obama, isn't it?" Emily shifts her weight near the door. I see her glance at Dr. Brennan, some unspoken signal passing between them. "And how are you managing daily tasks?" Dr. Brennan asks. "Eating, bathing, that sort of thing." I shrug, let my voice trail off. "Sometimes I forget to eat breakfast, or I can't remember if I already ate." Dr. Brennan nods sympathetically and makes another note. Emily steps forward now, her voice thick with false worry. "Doctor, he's getting worse every week. Last week he left the gas stove on all night. I came over the next morning, and the whole house smelled like gas. I'm terrified something's going to happen. I keep my face blank, but inside I'm cataloging the lie. I don't have a gas stove. I installed an electric range in 1987 and haven't touched it since. Dr. Brennan looks up at Emily, then back at me. Mr. Coleman, do you remember leaving the stove on? I shake my head slowly. I don't think so. Maybe. He doesn't remember, Emily says, her voice breaking a little. That's what scares me. Dr. Brennan closes her clipboard and stands. Mr. Coleman, I'd like to step outside with your daughter for just a moment. Will you be all right here? I nod, settle back into the chair like an old man content to wait. They walk out onto the front porch. The door doesn't close all the way, there's a 2-inch gap. I can't see them, but I know the cameras are still recording. And the wireless mic Frank clipped near the doorframe is close enough to pick up voices. I sit very still and listen. Emily's voice quieter now, but still audible. Doctor, can you write a certificate saying he needs assisted living? Something I can submit with the guardianship petition of Quotamo. Dr. Brennan's reply is cautious. I'd need to do a more thorough evaluation. These things take time. We agreed on $5,000. Emily's tone sharpens. Here's $2,500 up front. There's a pause. I hear the faint crinkle of an envelope being opened. Then Dr. Brennan's voice lower, smoother. Oh, well, in that case, I can certainly expedite the paperwork. I'll have a report written by this afternoon. Thank you, Emily says. I knew I could count on you. Footsteps. The door swings open. Dr. Brennan steps back inside, her professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Coleman, she says, based on what I've observed today, I'm recommending that you be placed in an assisted living facility. You need 24-hour care. It's for your own safety. I let my face crumple a little like I'm trying to process the words, but can't quite grasp them. Assisted living. What's that? It's a place where people can help you. Dad, Emily says, moving to my side, resting a hand on my shoulder. A safe place. Dr. Brennan packs up her clipboard and extends a hand. Take care, Mr. Coleman. I shake her hand weakly. She leaves. Emily stays. She crouches down in front of my chair, takes both my hands in hers. Her eyes are wet, actual tears, or a damn good imitation. Dad, she whispers, I'm so worried about you. I love you. You know that, right? I look at her, let my voice waver. You're a good daughter. She squeezes my hand, stands, and walks to the door. I'll call you tonight, okay? I nod. The door closes. I hear her car start the engine, fading down the street. I sit there for another 30 seconds just to be sure. Then I stand up, walk to the window, and watch her taillights disappear around the corner. Frank steps out from the back bedroom. She's gone, I say. Frank pulls out his phone, taps the screen, and holds it up. The video feed is crystal clear. Emily and Dr. Brennan on the porch, the envelope passing between them, the doctor's voice cold and transactional. I can certainly expedite the paperwork. Frank rewinds it, plays it again. The audio is perfect. Every word. Walt, he says quietly, we got her. Bribery. Medical fraud. Criminal conspiracy. This is prosecutable. I pull off the wrinkled shirt, toss it onto the couch, and grab a clean one from the closet. The costume's over. I'm done pretending. Now we just wait for Monday morning, I say. Frank nods. You should try to get some sleep. I will. But I don't. At 8 o'clock that night, my phone buzzes. Another text from Noah. Grandpa, Mom, and Brad just opened champagne. Mom said, we file at 9 tomorrow morning. By noon, the house is ours. Brad said, finally debt-free. They're laughing really loud. I recorded it. I read the message twice, then set the phone down on the kitchen table. Frank looks at me from across the room. You gonna be able to sleep tonight? I shake my head. No, but that's all right. Why's that? I look out the window at the dark street, the porch light casting long shadows across the yard. Because tomorrow, I say, my daughter's going to learn the last lesson I'll ever teach her. Never underestimate a man who's protecting what he loves. Frank doesn't say anything. He just nods, picks up his coffee cup, and drains the last of it. Outside, the night is quiet. Inside, I'm ready for war. Frank shows up at 6 o'clock with a canvas bag full of documents and a large sheet of poster board tucked under his arm. Let's organize this, he says, spreading everything across my dining table. He arranges the evidence in rows, like an engineer laying out materials for a final inspection. 6 appointment reminder cards lined up chronologically. March, May, July, September, October, November. An 8-month blueprint of Emily's plan. Next to them, the medical records from the phone consultations. Then Brad's financial statements, the original recording the video of Dr. Brennan accepting the bribe printouts of Noah's 18 text messages, and the trust documents showing the house now belongs to Noah. Frank unfolds the poster board and starts drawing a timeline in black marker. March 2024. Emily begins creating fake medical records. July 2024. Margaret's wedding ring sold for $3,200. September 2024. Emily asks Noah to document Richard's confusion. November last week. Richard signs forged power of attorney. Sunday, Dr. Brennan bribed $2,500. Monday tomorrow. Guardianship petition filed. He taps the final entry. This is the roadmap. Every step planned. Every move calculated. I stare at the timeline. 8 months of architecture. My daughter didn't wake up one morning and decide to destroy me. She built this piece by piece, the same way I taught her to approach any long-term project. At 7:30, Frank sets up his laptop and calls Martin Blackwell on video. Martin's face fills the screen, his office visible behind him, shelves of law books, framed degrees on the wall. Gentlemen, Martin says, I've reviewed everything you sent. Here's what we're looking at in terms of charges: elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, medical identity theft, bribery of a medical professional, criminal conspiracy. He pauses, adjusts his glasses. If Emily's convicted, she's facing 10 to 15 years in prison. Brad, as an accessory and co-conspirator, 7 to 10. Dr. Brennan will lose her medical license and serve at least 5 years. The numbers hang in the air. Frank leans back in his chair. And the evidence is solid. On airtight, Martin says. Between the recordings, the financial trail, and the video of the bribe, this is prosecutable on every count. He looks directly at me through the screen. Mr. Coleman, you've built a case that would make a district attorney weep with joy. I nod, but I don't feel victorious. I just feel tired. Martin ends the call. Frank closes the laptop and looks at me. Walt, he says quietly, you can still walk away from this. Take all of this to the police right now. Let them arrest Emily and Brad tomorrow morning. You don't have to be there. You don't have to face her. I shake my head. I need to look her in the eyes, I say. I need her to see that I'm not some confused old man she can manipulate. I need her to know I fought back. Frank studies me for a moment, then nods. All right, then let's make sure we do this right. He picks up his phone and dials, puts it on speaker. A woman's voice answers. Frank Miller. It's been a while. Hello, Sarah, Frank says. I need a favor. Detective Sarah Patterson, Portland, PD Elder Abuse Division. Frank worked with her 15 years ago on a contractor fraud case. She's sharp, methodical, and she doesn't play games. Frank explains the situation, gives her the broad strokes, the evidence we have the plan for tomorrow. Sarah says slowly. You're sure about this if we move too early, or if the evidence isn't as solid as you think they'll walk? I'm sure, Frank says. Tomorrow morning, 9:30, come to this address. We'll have everyone in one room, Emily, Brad, the evidence, and Mr. Coleman. You can take it from there. There's a long pause. Then, I'll be there. And Frank, this better be as good as you say it is. It is. He hangs up. At 8 o'clock, my phone buzzes. Noah's text, Grandpa, Mom, and Brad just opened champagne. Mom said, we file at 9 tomorrow morning. By noon, the house is ours. Brad said, finally, debt-free. They're laughing really loud. I recorded it. I show the text to Frank. He reads it, sets the phone down, and shakes his head. They think they've already won, he says. Or let them think that, I reply. After Frank leaves, I sit alone at the dining table, surrounded by the evidence. The timeline chart, the recordings, the forged documents, everything Emily built to bury me now turned into the foundation of her own collapse. I walk upstairs and pull out the old photo album from the closet, the one Margaret used to flip through on Sunday afternoons. There's Emily at 6 years old, missing her 2 front teeth, laughing at something I said while we built a birdhouse in the garage. Emily at 12, holding a blue ribbon from the school science fair. First prize. I was so proud I framed the newspaper clipping. Emily at 20 on her wedding day. I'm walking her down the aisle, her hand tucked into the crook of my arm. She's smiling. I'm smiling. Margaret's crying in the front row. I close the album. Somewhere between that gap-toothed little girl and the woman who tried to bury me alive, something broke. I don't know when. I don't know why. But tomorrow I'll give her one last chance to explain before the prison doors close behind her. I walk back downstairs. The house is clean organized. Frank removed the cameras this afternoon. They'd done their job. I've laid out a suit for tomorrow, the first time I've worn one in 6 months. I want to look like myself. Not a confused old man. Not a victim. Just Richard Coleman, engineer, father, fighter. At 10 o'clock, I lie down on the bed, the same bed Margaret and I shared for 35 years. The room still smells faintly like her lavender lotion even after all this time. I whisper into the dark. Margaret, if you're watching this, what would you say? I can almost hear her voice, soft, steady. Do the right thing, Walt. Protect Noah. And let Emily know love doesn't mean weakness. I nod to the empty room. Tomorrow it all ends. I wake at 6 in the morning after 3 hours of sleep that felt more like falling than resting. I make coffee, Folgers, same as always, and stand at the kitchen window watching the sun rise over Portland. November fog rolls through the streets in soft gray waves, the kind of morning that makes the city look like a watercolor painting. Beautiful and cold. 30 years ago, I stood at this exact window and watched a crew pour the foundation for this house. Margaret was pregnant with Emily then. I remember thinking, this is what I'm building for. A family, a future, something solid. I take a sip of coffee. It burns going down. At 7:15, my phone buzzes. A text from Noah. Grandpa, Mom told me to stay home from school today. She said, we're going to have good news soon. I told her I wanted to come see you first. She said, okay, that my friend Jake can pick me up from your house and take me to school after. I'm biking over now. Are you ready? I text back, I'm ready. Are you? 3 dots. Then yes. I love you, Grandpa. I stare at the screen. Noah hasn't said those words to me since he was 12 years old. 4 years of silence. And now on the morning, everything falls apart. He says it. I set the phone down before I start shaking too hard to hold it. At 7:45, there's a knock at the door. I open it, and there's Noah wearing his school uniform, khaki pants, white polo backpack slung over one shoulder. He looks so young, too young to be tangled up in this. You okay? I ask. He shakes his head. No. But I know this is the right thing to do. I pull him into a hug. He's taller than he was a year ago, almost my height now. I can feel him trembling. Whatever happens today, I say quietly, you remember this, none of this is your fault. You didn't cause it. You didn't ask for it. And you're the hero in this story, not the villain. Noah nods against my shoulder. When he pulls back, his eyes are red, but he's not crying. Where do you want me? He asks. Living room. Just sit. I'll handle the rest. At 8:15, Frank arrives. He's not alone. Detective Sarah Patterson steps out of the passenger side of Frank's truck. She's in her mid-40s, wearing jeans and a plain jacket, nothing that screams cop. Her hair's pulled back in a ponytail, and she's got the kind of face that's seen too many bad situations to be surprised by one more. Frank introduces us. Sarah shakes my hand, firm grip, direct eye contact. Mr. Coleman. She says, I've reviewed all the evidence Frank sent over. This is the clearest case of elder abuse I've seen in 15 years. But I need to make sure you understand. Once I walk in there and make arrests, there's no turning back. Your daughter will go to jail. So will her husband. This is your last chance to change your mind. I look at her for a long moment. Then I say, Detective, I spent 40 years building bridges. You know what happens when a bridge's foundation is rotten. She tilts her head slightly. See, it collapses. I continue. And it takes people down with it. My family's foundation is rotten. If I don't replace it now, the whole thing's going to fall. Sarah studies me, then nods. All right. Here's the plan. I'll stay in my car parked down the street. When you're ready, when they've said enough to incriminate themselves, you text Frank. He'll signal me and I'll come in. Don't try to do this alone. Understood. Understood. Frank claps me on the shoulder. I'll be in the kitchen. They won't see me, but I'll hear everything. If they try to run, I'll block the back door. Okay. Sarah heads back to her car. Frank goes inside and positions himself in the kitchen out of sight from the living room. I check the clock. 8:50. I walk into the living room. It's spotless. I cleaned it last night. Arranged the furniture, made sure everything was in order. It looks less like a home and more like a courtroom. Noah's sitting on the couch, hands folded in his lap, staring at the floor. I sit down in Margaret's chair, the one she used to curl up in on Sunday afternoons, with a book and a cup of tea. My hands are shaking. I try to steady them, but I can't. Noah reaches over and takes my hand in his. You're so strong, I whisper. I'm proud of you. He squeezes my hand and doesn't let go. At 9 o'clock, the doorbell rings. I stand. Take a breath. Walk to the door and open it. Emily's standing on the porch, dressed in a black blazer and slacks. Her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looks polished, professional, like someone about to close a business deal. Behind her, Brad's wearing a gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He looks calm, confident. "Good morning, Dad," Emily says brightly. "You ready? We've got the appointment with the lawyer at 9:30. I know it's early, but we want to make sure everything's finalized today." Brad nods. "Morning, Dad." The word tastes like ash in my mouth. "Come in," I say. "We need to talk." Emily's smile doesn't falter. "Of course. Let's talk on the way." "No, cunt," I say. "We're talking here, now. Come inside." Something flickers across her face. Confusion maybe, or the first edge of suspicion, but she steps through the door. Brad follows. I close the door behind them and lead them into the living room. They walk in, and Emily stops mid-step. Noah's sitting on the couch. "Noah." Emily's voice sharpens. "What are you doing here? Why aren't you at school?" Noah doesn't answer. He just looks at her, his face blank, his hands still folded in his lap. Emily turns to me, and for the first time I see her mask slip. Just a little. Just enough. "Dad, what's going on?" I close the door to the living room. Lock it. Then I turn to face her, and when I speak, my voice is different. Steady, clear. No hesitation, no confusion. Sit down, I say. Both of you. We have a lot to talk about. Brad glances at Emily. Emily stares at me, and for the first time in 8 months, I see a flicker of worry in her eyes. She's starting to realize something's wrong. Before I reveal what happened next, comment "still here" so I know you're standing with me to the very end. And tell me, if you were in my place, would you choose forgiveness or let the truth shatter everything? A quick note before we continue: the next part contains some dramatized elements for storytelling purposes. Certain details may not reflect reality exactly as shown. If this isn't for you, this is your moment to step away. Emily and Brad sit down on the sofa. Emily's still trying to hold her smile in place, but I can see the cracks forming. "Dad," she says, her voice bright but tight. "What's going on? We're going to be late for the appointment." "There is no appointment, Emily." The smile falters. "What do you mean?" I stay standing. I want the height. I want the control. "On Friday last week?" I say slowly. "I called to wish you a happy birthday. You remember that?" Emily glances at Brad, then back at me. "Yes, I remember." "Do you remember that I mentioned signing some papers?" Her face flushes slightly. Yes. I never hung up the phone, Emily." Silence drops like a stone. "I heard the entire conversation between you and Brad." Brad stands up fast enough that the couch cushion shifts. "What are you talking about?" "We didn't." I cut him off. "The old fool signed everything." "That's what you said, Emily. Next week we'll move him to Shady Pines." "That's what you said, Brad." Emily's face goes white. "Dad, you misunderstood." "Did I?" I reach into my pocket and pull out a folded piece of paper. I unfold it slowly, deliberately. It's the transcript Frank printed out for me, every word of that conversation, time-stamped. I set it on the coffee table. Emily stares at it like it's a live grenade. I reach into the drawer of the side table and pull out the 6 appointment reminder cards. I don't describe them. I don't explain them. I just set them down on the coffee table in a neat row, one by one. March, May, July, September, October, November. These, I say, are 6 medical appointments you arranged by impersonating me. I never went to any of these places. You created a fake medical history over 6 months. He's confused. He can't remember. He's not capable of living alone. As I set down the last card, I watch Emily's face. She stops breathing. Her hands start trembling. She knows. She knows I know everything. "Dad!" Her voice shakes. That was because..." "Because what?" I lean forward. "Because you needed evidence to convince a judge I was incompetent." Emily opens her mouth. Nothing comes out. From the couch, Noah speaks. His voice is quiet, but it cuts through the room like a blade. "Mom made me write down every time Grandpa was confused. But he was never confused. She made me lie." Emily whips around to face him. "Noah, you told him." Noah looks her right in the eye. "Yes, because I love him. And you, Mom, I don't know who you are anymore." Emily's face crumples. Brad's on his feet now, red-faced, jabbing a finger at Noah. "You little..." "Sit down." My voice is ice. Brad freezes. I turn back to Emily. "Sunday afternoon, you brought Dr. Brennan to this house. You paid her $2,500 to write a fake evaluation. I have proof. Video and audio." Frank steps out of the kitchen holding a tablet. He taps the screen, then turns it toward Emily and Brad. The video plays, clear as daylight. Emily on the front porch, handing Dr. Brennan an envelope. The rustle of paper. Dr. Brennan's voice smooth and transactional. "Okay, I'll have the report written by this afternoon." Brad explodes. "You set us up, you..." I say calmly. "I did. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then I continue. Now about this house." I gesture around the living room. The house you were planning to sell to pay off Brad's $847,000 in debt. I have bad news for you. Emily's eyes widen. I transferred ownership of this house into an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is Noah. This house doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to your son, and you can't touch it. Emily's whole body sags. She looks like someone just pulled the ground out from under her. Dad? Her voice is barely a whisper. What did you do? I protected what I built. I sit down in Margaret's chair across from them. I'm tired, so tired. But I'm not done. I built this house with my own hands, I say. Your mother picked out the paint colors for every room. I thought this house would be your inheritance. I thought it would be something you'd want to keep to pass down to Noah. But you didn't want a legacy. You just wanted cash. Emily's crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones from Sunday. You don't understand, she chokes out. We're drowning in debt. We had no other choice. You could have asked me for help. She stares at me. You could have come to me and said, Dad, we're in trouble. We need help. I would have helped you, Emily. I would have figured something out. But you didn't ask. You decided it was easier to bury me alive and take what you wanted. Her face twists. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Do you remember your mother's wedding ring? Emily blinks, thrown by the sudden shift. The one you borrowed last year. I continue to get it appraised for insurance. Her mouth opens, closes. I found the receipt, Emily. You sold it. $3,200. She doesn't deny it. She just sits there, tears streaming down her face. Ooh, that ring, I say quietly, is the one I gave your mother 40 years ago. I saved for 6 months to buy it. She wore it every single day until the day she died, and you sold it like it was a piece of junk at a yard sale. Emily covers her face with her hands. Brad suddenly stands. That's it. We're leaving. You can't prove anything, old man. I look up at him. My voice is cold, flat. Sit down. I don't have to listen to you. Detective Patterson. I call out, please come in. The front door swings open. Detective Sarah Patterson steps into the living room, wearing her full uniform badge glinting on her chest. Behind her are 2 other officers in uniform. Brad's face goes gray. Sarah looks at Emily and Brad with the calm, professional expression of someone who's done this 1,000 times. The Emily Coleman Whitaker, she says. Brad Whitaker, you're both under arrest for elder abuse, financial fraud, forgery, and bribery of a medical professional. She steps forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from her belt. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Emily doesn't move. She just stares at the handcuffs like she can't believe they're real. Brad tries one last time. This is insane. We didn't, Turn around, Mr. Whitaker, Sarah says. Hands behind your back. One of the officers steps forward and cuffs Brad. He doesn't resist, he just stands there, face red, jaw clenched. Sarah turns to Emily. Mrs. Coleman Whitaker. Emily finally looks up. Her mascara is smeared. Her hair's fallen out of the bun. She looks small, broken. Stand up, please, Sarah says gently. Emily stands on shaking legs. Sarah cuffs her wrists behind her back. I watch it all happen. I don't feel victorious. I don't feel relieved. I just feel tired. Noah's sitting beside me, gripping my hand so hard his knuckles are white. It's okay, I whisper to him. It's over now. Sarah nods to the other officers, and they start leading Emily and Brad toward the door. Emily turns back one last time, looking at me over her shoulder. Dad, she says, her voice breaking. I really am sorry. I don't answer. The door closes behind them. And just like that, it's over. Brad starts yelling before the cuffs even close around his wrists. This is a setup, he shouts, twisting violently toward Detective Sarah Patterson. That old man manipulated everything. He recorded us. This whole thing is a trap. Sarah doesn't flinch. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her tone is level, almost clinical. "Mr. Whitaker," she says calmly, "all evidence collected in this case was obtained legally and documented properly. You have the right to remain silent. I strongly advise you to exercise that right." Brad's face burns crimson. His jaw works furiously, as if he's chewing on rage. For a second, I think he'll keep screaming. But something in Sarah's steady gaze makes him swallow his next words. He shuts his mouth. I turn to Emily. She isn't shouting. She isn't resisting. She's sitting on the couch in the living room I built with my own hands. Her posture, perfectly upright, hands folded loosely in her lap. Tears stream down her cheeks, but she makes no attempt to wipe them away. She just looks at me like she's waiting for something to change. "Dad," she whispers, "you're really doing this." I meet her eyes. I don't look away. "No, Emily," I say quietly. "You did this." Officer Ramirez, mid-30s, steady hands. Nameplate polished, steps forward and takes Brad by the arm. He turns him around, pulling his wrists behind his back. The metallic snap of the handcuffs locking echoes through the room. Brad jerks instinctively, testing the restraints. "I'll sue. You hear me? I'll sue every one of you. I'll..." Frank's voice cuts in from near the kitchen doorway. It's colder than I've ever heard it. "You won't do anything, Brad," he says flatly. "You're facing 7 to 10 years. And when you walk out of prison, if you ever do, this city will know exactly who you are." Brad opens his mouth, ready to fire back. Nothing comes out. He looks at Frank as if searching for a weakness. He doesn't find one. Sarah steps toward Emily. "Ms. Whitaker," she says gently but firmly, "please stand." Emily doesn't move right away. She looks small suddenly, fragile. Then slowly she rises to her feet. Her hands tremble visibly. Sarah removes another pair of handcuffs from her belt. The soft metallic click as she opens them seems unnaturally loud in the quiet house. She guides Emily's wrists behind her back. Click. The sound of the lock snapping shut slices through the air. Time feels suspended. My daughter, in handcuffs, in my living room. Emily turns her head toward Noah, who is still sitting beside me on the couch. "Noah," she says, her voice breaking. "Baby, I'm sorry. I did this for us. I was trying to fix everything. I was trying to give us a fresh start." Noah stands up slowly. He takes one deliberate step backward, putting space between himself and his mother. "No," he says quietly. His voice isn't loud, but it's steady. "You weren't fixing anything. You were stealing from Grandpa. You lied about him. You lied to me." Emily's face crumples inward. "Noah, please." "I'm staying here," he says. "With Grandpa." Her breath catches sharply. "You made your choice," he adds. The silence that follows is heavier than any shouting. Frank steps forward and hands Sarah a small USB drive. "Everything's on there," he says. "The porch video, the FaceTime recording, the forged medical files, financial documents, and 18 separate audio recordings from Noah." Sarah takes the drive, walks to the side table, and plugs it into her laptop. She scrolls through the files quickly but thoroughly. 2 full minutes pass. Then she looks up. "Mr. Coleman," she says, "this is one of the strongest elder exploitation cases I've ever reviewed." I nod once. There's no triumph in me, only fatigue. Ramirez begins guiding Brad toward the front door. Brad mutters under his breath about attorneys and appeals, and how this won't stick, but his volume has dropped. The fire has gone out of him. Sarah turns Emily toward the exit. Emily stops at the threshold. She looks back at me one final time. "Dad," she whispers, "can't you forgive me?" I don't answer immediately. I look at her not as the woman in handcuffs, but as the child who once asked me how bridges stand. The teenager who won science fairs. The bride who squeezed my arm before walking down the aisle. "You're asking me about forgiveness," I say quietly. Her lips tremble. "You forged my medical records," I continue. "You tried to declare me incompetent. You sold your mother's wedding ring. You used your own son to build a case against me." Tears spill freely down her face. And now you ask me to forgive you. I'm your daughter, she whispers desperately. You used to be, I reply. Right now I don't recognize you. Something inside her seems to collapse. Sarah gently guides her forward. I follow them outside. Two police cruisers idle at the curb engines, humming softly in the cool November air. A thin layer of fog hangs low over the street. Neighbors stand quietly on their porches. Mrs. Gable from across the way. The Harpers, 2 houses down. No one speaks. They simply watch. Ramirez opens the rear door of the first cruiser and seats Brad inside. Brad continues talking, but the door shuts mid-sentence. Sarah opens the second vehicle. Emily steps inside without resistance. She doesn't look at me again. She stares straight ahead, eyes unfocused. The doors close. Engines rev. The cars pull away slowly, disappearing into the gray haze. I remain standing on the porch long after the taillights vanish. Sarah approaches me before leaving. We'll also be arresting Dr. Brennan later today, she says. She'll face charges, and her license will be suspended. I nod. Good. You'll hear from our office about next steps. She gets into her car and drives off. I walk back inside. The house feels cavernous now. Too quiet. Too empty. Noah is still on the couch, head in his hands. His shoulders shake with quiet sobs he's trying to suppress. I sit beside him and wrap my arm around his shoulders. He leans into me without hesitation. We sit like that for a long time. The wall clock ticks steadily. A car passes outside. Somewhere down the block, a dog barks. Life continues. Frank stands near the window looking out at the empty street. You did what you had to, he says quietly. But from here on out, nothing's going to feel the same. I know, I reply. What do you need right now? Time, I say. He nods. He picks up his jacket, walks over, squeezes my shoulder, once firm and wordless, and leaves. Noah and I remain seated. At 11 o'clock, my phone vibrates. Unknown number. Mr. Coleman, this is the law office of Davidson and Pierce. We have been retained to represent Emily Whitaker. Do not contact our client directly. All communication must go through our office. I read it twice, then I delete it. Noah looks up, eyes red and swollen. Who was that? Her attorney. He swallows. What happens now? I lean back slowly and close my eyes for a moment. They're going to fight, I say. They'll challenge everything. They'll try to poke holes in the case. They'll try to paint me as vindictive. Noah's jaw tightens. And us. And we fight back. He nods. The house is quiet again. But this time the silence isn't fear. It's resolve. The arrests were only the beginning. The real battle starts now. At 2 o'clock, my phone rings. Detective Patterson. Mr. Coleman. She says, I wanted to update you. Emily's being interrogated right now. She's admitted to some of the charges, but she's blaming most of it on Brad. Says he forced her into it. I close my eyes. She's lying. This was her plan. I heard her voice on that FaceTime call. She designed the whole thing. We know, Sarah says. We have the evidence. But I wanted you to be aware she's still trying to deny responsibility. There's a pause. Then she continues. Brad, on the other hand, confessed to everything. The $847,000 in debt. Convincing Emily to sell your house. Bribing Dr. Brennan. He's already asking for a plea deal, hoping for 5 years instead of 10. And Emily, she's asking to see you. No, Sarah doesn't push. Understood. I'll let you know if anything changes. She hangs up. I sit there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand. At 3 o'clock, I go back inside. Noah's still on the couch exactly where I left him this morning. He hasn't moved. He's just sitting there, staring at the wall. Noah, I say gently. Have you eaten anything? He shakes his head. I walk into the kitchen and make a sandwich. Ham and cheese, Noah's favorite since he was 6 years old. I put it on a plate, grab a glass of water, and bring it over to him. You need to eat, I say, setting it down on the coffee table. I'm not hungry, Noah says quietly. I know. But you still need to eat. He picks up the sandwich and takes a small bite, then another. I sit down next to him. After a few minutes, he speaks. Grandpa, who am I going to live with now? I look at him. With me. Who else? He blinks. Really? Noah, this house belongs to you now. Remember, you're the landlord. I'm just renting. I try to make it sound light like a joke. But Noah doesn't laugh. He just stares down at the sandwich in his hands. Will I? His voice cracks. Will I never see Mom again? I take a breath. You'll see her if you want to. But not right now. Your mother has to face the consequences of what she did. And you need time to heal. Noah nods slowly. He doesn't say anything else. Just takes another bite of the sandwich. By the time evening comes, Noah's gone upstairs to his room. I can hear him moving around up there, opening drawers, closing them, trying to settle into a space that used to feel temporary, but now might be permanent. I walk out onto the back porch and sit down in the old wooden chair. The one Margaret used to sit in on summer nights watching the fireflies. The sky over Portland is clear tonight. Stars scattered across the darkness like broken glass. I think about Emily, 7 years old, tugging on my sleeve, asking me to name the constellations. That one's Orion, Dad. See the 3 stars in a row? That's his belt. 12 years old, standing on this same porch with her science fair project, a model of a suspension bridge she'd built out of popsicle sticks and wire. First prize. 20 years old, glowing in her wedding dress, holding my arm as I walked her down the aisle. Somewhere between that little girl and the woman I saw in handcuffs this morning, something broke. Was it my fault? Did I push her too hard? Expect too much? Was it Margaret's? Did we spoil her? Give her everything she wanted until she thought the world owed her more? Or was it Emily's own doing? Did she make choices, one after another, that led her here? I don't know. I sit there for a long time watching the stars, and I ask myself the question I've been avoiding all day. Will I ever forgive her? A voice in my head, soft, steady, sounding a lot like Margaret, answers back. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting Walt. It means letting go of the burden. But I'm not ready to let go. Not yet. The wound's too deep. The betrayal's too fresh. Maybe someday, but not today. At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzes. A text from Sarah. Mr. Coleman, Emily posted bail, $50,000. A bail bondsman covered it. Brad's mother paid the 10% fee, about $5,000. She's out, but there's a restraining order in place. She can't come within 500 feet of you or Noah. Preliminary hearing is set for Thursday. Do you want to attend? I stare at the message for a moment. Then I type back, yes, I'll be there. Later that night, I lie in bed staring up at the ceiling. The house is quiet. Noah's asleep upstairs. The clock on the nightstand ticks softly. For the first time in 72 hours, I feel something I didn't expect. Emptiness. Not relief, not victory, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. I saved the house. I saved myself. I saved Noah. But I lost my daughter, and I don't know if I'll ever get her back, or if I even want to. Thursday morning, November 21st. 10 o'clock. Multnomah County Courthouse. I walk in with Frank and Noah. The building smells like old wood and floor polish. We sit in the third row. Up front at the defendant's table, Emily and Brad sit in orange jumpsuits. They haven't been given civilian clothes, yet this hearing was scheduled too fast. Emily's hair is pulled back in a messy ponytail. No makeup. She looks 10 years older than she did on Monday. Judge Carol Whitfield enters. She's maybe 58, gray hair, cut short expression that says she's seen every excuse in the book. Everyone stands. She sits. We sit. The court will now hear the preliminary charges. She says, her voice flat and formal. She reads from a sheet of paper. Emily Coleman Whitaker. 6 counts of medical identity theft. 3 counts of forgery. 2 counts of elder financial abuse. 1 count of bribery of a medical professional. 1 count of criminal conspiracy. Maximum combined sentence, 15 years. A pause. Then, Brad Whitaker. 2 counts of elder financial abuse. 1 count of criminal conspiracy. Maximum combined sentence, 10 years. Emily stares down at the table. Brad's jaw is clenched so tight I can see the muscle twitching. The judge looks up. Mr. Coleman, the court would like to hear your victim impact statement. I stand. Frank squeezes my shoulder once as I walk to the front. There's a microphone on a stand. I adjust it, clear my throat, and look directly at Emily. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 68 years old. I built the house my daughter tried to steal with my own hands. I raised her with everything I had. Love, patience, the values I thought mattered. Honesty, kindness, family. Emily's shoulders start shaking. And I thought I taught her those things. I continue. But somewhere along the way, she learned something else. She learned how to lie, how to manipulate, how to betray the people who love her. I take a breath. I don't know where I went wrong. Maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I didn't push hard enough. But I know this, if I hadn't fought back, I would have lost everything. Not just my house, my dignity, my freedom, my legacy. I look at the judge now. She didn't just try to take my property. She tried to erase me. I'm asking this court to hold her accountable under the full extent of the law. I step back. My hands are shaking, but I keep them at my sides. Thank you, Mr. Coleman, the judge says. Then she looks at Noah. Noah Whitaker. The court understands you have something to say as well. Noah stands. He's trembling. Frank puts a hand on his back, steadying him. Noah walks to the microphone, and for a moment I think he's going to freeze. But he doesn't. And my name is Noah Whitaker. He says, his voice quiet but clear. My parents told me to write down every time my grandpa seemed confused. But he was never confused. They wanted me to create fake evidence. They used me. He pauses, swallows hard. I love my grandpa, and I don't want to see my parents anymore. I watch Emily's face crumple. She covers her mouth with her hand, but the sobs come anyway, loud, choking sounds that echo through the courtroom. Noah walks back to his seat. He doesn't look at her. Emily's lawyer stands. He's a public defender. She can't afford a private attorney anymore. He's young, maybe 30, and he looks tired. Your Honor. He says, my client acted under extreme financial pressure. Her husband accrued nearly $1 million in debt. She was desperate, I think. But don't say desperation doesn't justify trying to bury your father alive. Judge Whitfield leans forward, her expression cold. The court has reviewed the evidence extensively, she says. This is one of the most calculated, sophisticated elder abuse schemes I have encountered in 20 years on the bench. The defendants acted with premeditation and a complete disregard for the victim's well-being. She pauses. When Emily Coleman Whitaker and Brad Whitaker are hereby remanded to custody without bail until trial. The previous bail order is revoked. Trial is scheduled for 3 months from today. Emily shoots to her feet. No, Your Honor, please, I have a son. I need to take care of my son. The judge's gaze doesn't soften. You made a choice when you decided to deceive and exploit your father, Ms. Whitaker. Officers return the defendants to custody. 2 officers step forward. Emily's still talking, pleading, but the judge has already moved on. The officers guide Emily and Brad toward the side door. Emily turns back one last time, looking at Noah. Noah, she says, her voice breaking. Mom loves you. Noah turns his face away. She looks at me. Dad. I'm sorry. I don't answer. The door closes behind her. Outside the courthouse, Detective Patterson is waiting. Mr. Coleman, she says, I wanted to let you know we arrested Dr. Brennan yesterday afternoon. She confessed to accepting $2,500 from Emily. Her medical license has been revoked, and she's facing 5 years in prison. She'll also have to provide restitution to 12 other victims we've identified. I blink. 12 others, Sarah nods. She's been doing this for years, falsifying medical evaluations for families trying to get guardianship. You stopped her. That afternoon, Martin Blackwell calls. Mr. Coleman. He says, I have good news. We recovered $12,000 from Emily's account money she'd taken from you over the past 6 months. And we found your wife's wedding ring. It was still at the pawn shop. Hadn't been sold yet. I redeemed it for $3,500. My throat tightens. You got it back. I'm sending it to you today. Thank you, Martin. That evening, I sit at the kitchen table. The small package arrived an hour ago. I open it carefully. Margaret's ring. It's been cleaned, polished. It looks exactly the way it did the day I slipped it onto her finger 40 years ago. I carry it upstairs and place it back in the jewelry box right next to her photo. I close the lid gently. You're home, I whisper. My phone buzzes. An email notification. I pull it out and read the subject line. From Emily Whitaker, Multnomah County Jail. Subject, please read this, Dad. The preview text says, I'm writing you a letter. I want to explain everything. Please just read it. I stare at the screen. My finger hovers over the open button. Should I read it? A week goes by. 7 ordinary days. 7 mornings of coffee on the porch. 7 evenings of quiet dinners with Noah. 7 nights of staring at the ceiling longer than I should. The email sits unopened the entire time. Frank drops by the following Saturday morning. We're on the back porch, steam rising from our mugs, November air, cool enough to bite, but not yet cruel. He doesn't circle around it. Have you read it, he asks. I know exactly what he means. No, he studies my face. Planning to? I rest my cup on the small iron table between us. I don't know. If I open it, I'm afraid something in me will soften, and I'm not sure I'm ready for that. But if I don't open it, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what she said. Frank exhales slowly. That's one hell of a crossroads. Yeah, he nods once and lets the conversation die there. That's one of the reasons I've trusted him for 40 years. He knows when to push and when to let silence do its work. That weekend, Noah's upstairs finishing homework. I'm alone in the living room, the house unusually still. I pick up my phone. The email is still bolded, unread. My thumb hovers for a second. Then I open it. The message contains a scanned letter, 3 handwritten pages, transmitted through the prison's email system. Emily's handwriting is tight and deliberate, the strokes careful, as if she's trying to conserve both ink and forgiveness. I begin reading. Dear Dad, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I've forfeited the right to expect forgiveness. But I need you to understand something. I didn't begin this wanting to hurt you. I pause. My chest tightens. I draw in a breath and continue. 18 months ago, Brad lost $500,000 in a real estate investment that collapsed. We were facing foreclosure. I panicked. I convinced myself that if I sold your house, we could erase the debt and then buy you something smaller, somewhere easier to manage. I told myself I was helping you, that I was reducing your burden. I closed my eyes briefly, but the plan changed. Or maybe I changed. I started cutting corners. I started lying. And then I began believing the lies. I told myself you were confused, that you needed someone to step in, that I was being responsible. My jaw tightens. The ring. Selling Mom's ring was the worst thing I've ever done. I needed money fast. It felt like the only option. But I see her face every night when I close my eyes. I don't expect her forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I swallow hard and continue. I'm sorry for what I did to Noah. I turned my own son into a pawn. I twisted him into something he never should have had to be. I don't deserve to call myself his mother. Dad, I'm not asking for forgiveness now. I know that's unrealistic. But maybe one day, 5 years, 10 years from now, you'll be able to look at me and see more than the woman who betrayed you. Maybe you'll see the daughter who once loved you. I accept my sentence. I deserve it. But I love you. Even if you doubt that it's true. Love, Emily. I lower the phone slowly. The house is silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Part of me burns with anger. She still couches it in reasoning panic foreclosure justification. I thought I was helping. That line alone makes my blood rise. Helping doesn't involve forged documents and fake diagnoses. Another part of me aches. No matter what she did, she is still the child I carried on my shoulders at the zoo. Still the girl who once asked how bridges stand without falling. And another part, quieter, heavier, is simply tired. 68 years old. I have built structures that lasted longer than some marriages. I do not have the energy to lug resentment forever. But forgiveness, not yet. I'm not there. I don't respond. I also don't delete the message. Instead, I print it. The pages slide from the printer warm and slightly curled. I fold them carefully, aligning the edges with more precision than necessary, and place them in the bottom drawer of Margaret's old desk, the same drawer where she once kept her diary and pressed flowers. Someday, maybe, but not today. That evening, Noah comes downstairs. "Grandpa," he says, softly lingering in the doorway. "Did you read Mom's letter?" "I did." He shifts his weight. "Do you want me to read it?" I think carefully before answering. "That's your choice, Noah. If you want to see it, I'll give it to you. But you don't owe anyone that, not yet." He's quiet for a long moment. "Maybe later," he says. "Maybe when I'm older." I nod. That sounds wise. That night, I lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan, tracing slow circles in the dark. I remember an argument Margaret and I once had with my brother over something trivial. We didn't speak to him for half a year. One night, Margaret sat on the edge of this same bed and said, "Walt, anger is a rock. You can carry it as long as you want, but it only gets heavier." I didn't listen then. I am listening now. Forgiveness is not immediate. It is not dramatic. It is not a switch you flip and walk away lighter. It is a process measured in small internal shifts. And time is something I still possess. 6 weeks later, my phone rings. Martin Blackwell's voice comes through steady and professional. "Mr. Coleman, I wanted to inform you Emily has accepted a plea agreement. She has confessed to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 7 years instead of 15. Brad accepted 5 years. There will be no formal trial." I thank him. I end the call. The house feels unusually quiet. It's over. The hearings, the depositions, the looming threat of courtroom testimony, the tension that's hung over every week for months. Finished. So why does my chest feel hollow instead of relieved? I expected a sense of closure, a clean break, a moment where the weight lifts and I can breathe differently. Instead, what I feel is complicated. Relief, yes, but braided with grief. The legal battle has concluded. The evidence spoke. The system moved. Consequences were delivered. But no sentence restores a wedding ring. No plea agreement rebuilds trust. No prison term rewrites the years before betrayal. Justice has a way of closing files. It does not always close wounds. I sit there in the quiet phone resting on the coffee table and let the feeling wash through me. It's over. And yet somehow it isn't. I stand behind a wooden podium in a conference room overlooking downtown Portland, my hands resting lightly on either side as I take in the faces before me. There are close to 50 people in attendance, men and women, who have survived elder abuse. Investigative journalists, a city council member, volunteers, attorneys, and the full board of the Margaret Coleman Foundation for Elder Justice. The air carries a quiet weight of shared experience and cautious hope. It is mid-November, exactly 1 year since Emily and Brad were arrested in my living room. Behind me, mounted on easels, hang 3 photographs that define this journey, Margaret on our wedding day, sunlight soft against her veil, Noah laughing on the backyard swing, and Frank and me seated at my dining table, documents spread out between us like the blueprint of a different kind of structure. I clear my throat and begin. "A year ago," I say slowly, "the people I trusted most were preparing to take my home, my finances, and my freedom. I believed betrayal of that magnitude was rare. I was wrong. Thousands of older Americans face similar schemes every year, quietly, invisibly often, from within their own families. The Margaret Coleman Foundation exists so those voices are not alone. I let the silence settle for a beat before continuing. We offer free legal representation, investigative support, and trauma counseling for victims of elder abuse. Our initial $200,000 in funding came from recovered assets in my case, along with donations from members of this community. Every single dollar is dedicated to protecting those who built this city and deserve to grow old in safety and dignity. Frank sits in the front row, his posture relaxed, but his eyes alert, nodding slightly as I speak. Beside him is Martin Blackwell, with a legal pad balanced on his knee, already jotting down notes. Detective Sarah Patterson stands near the rear exit, arms crossed loosely, badge clipped to her belt, a silent guardian even in civilian clothes. And next to her sits Noah, 17, now a senior in high school. There is a steadiness in him that was not there 12 months ago. His gaze meets mine, focused and determined. He applied to Portland State University's Justice Studies program last week. 2 nights ago, as we cleared the dinner dishes, he said, "Grandpa, once I graduate, I want to volunteer at the foundation during every school break." I smiled and told him the truth. "We'll be lucky to have you. Emily is not in the room. She remains incarcerated at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. 1 year has passed since her sentencing. It is not enough time to erase damage, but it is enough time for reflection to begin. In the past 12 months, she has written 4 handwritten letters. The first was defensive, layered with explanations. The second acknowledged harm, but still shifted blame. The third felt quieter, more honest. The fourth was stripped of justification entirely, just remorse, plain and unadorned. I replied only once, sending a brief postcard that read, "I hope you are safe. I am not ready for more." I keep her letters in Margaret's old desk drawer beneath a stack of foundation paperwork. I cannot yet discard them. They are part of the truth. 10 months after her arrest, Noah asked if he could visit her. I drove him to the prison on a gray morning and waited in the parking lot while he went inside for half an hour. When he returned, his eyes were rimmed red. We drove home in silence for several miles before he spoke. "She asked if I forgive her," he said quietly. I told her I'm trying, but I need more time. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "That's honest," I told him. "Honesty is enough." 6 months after launching the foundation, 18 months after her arrest, I made my own visit. The memory remains vivid. I sat across from Emily in a small visitation room separated by thick plexiglass. She looked thinner, her hair pulled back without vanity, her hands clasped tightly as if anchoring herself. I lifted the receiver. "Dad," she said, "thank you for coming." For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I asked, "Are you okay?" She shook her head slowly. "No. But I'm alive. And I think about you and Noah every day. I can't undo what I did. I just want you to know I see it now." I studied her face, the same face I once lifted toward the sky when she was a child, asking how bridges stand. "I'm trying to forgive you, Jess," I said carefully. "It's not a switch you flip. Some days I make progress. Some days I'm still angry. But I refuse to carry that anger forever. Your mother used to say, forgiveness isn't for the other person. It's so you can put down the rock you're carrying." Tears pooled in her eyes. "Is Noah okay?" I hesitated before answering. "He's strong, applying to college. He wants to work with the foundation." Her expression collapsed into something raw and complicated. "That's good. Tell him I'm proud of him." "I will," I said. We spoke for 10 more minutes about small things, about books she was reading, about the weather. Nothing grand, nothing absolving. When the guard signaled the end of our time, I stood and placed my palm against the glass. She mirrored the gesture. The separation was tangible, but something in me felt slightly lighter as I walked away. Not healed, but moving. Later, back in my home office, I found myself staring at a framed photograph taken in 2015. Margaret stood in our backyard holding a watering can, sunlight threading through her hair. I touched the edge of the frame and whispered, "We did it, Maggie. We built something that matters." Over the past 12 months, the foundation has assisted more than 20 families facing similar exploitation. 20 homes protected. 20 elderly men and women who now sleep without fear of being declared incompetent for someone else's gain. The number is small compared to the thousands who need help, but each case represents a complete victory, a preserved dignity, a reclaimed voice. I think about Frank, who still answers his phone no matter the hour. About Martin, who refused payment and continues to donate his time. About Sarah, who visits every Thursday to review case files with our volunteer team. About Noah, who spreads textbooks across my kitchen table and asks questions that stretch beyond law into ethics, questions about mercy, accountability, and restoration. At 69, I understand something I did not fully grasp. Before, family is not defined solely by blood. It is defined by who stands beside you when the structure collapses and helps you rebuild. One Saturday afternoon, Noah and I sit together on the old backyard swing. The ropes creak gently under our combined weight. Fallen leaves scatter across the lawn, golden and brittle. "Do you ever regret it?" he asks quietly, turning Mom in. I consider his question carefully. I regret that it reached that point, I answer at last. I regret the lies. I regret the years lost. But I do not regret protecting you, or this house, or the truth. Love doesn't mean allowing someone to destroy you. Sometimes it means setting a boundary and holding it. He leans his head lightly against my shoulder. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too," I reply. The sky above Portland shifts into bands of orange and violet as the sun lowers. The work of the foundation continues: case files, court dates, community workshops. Emily will serve her sentence. Perhaps one day, when time has done its quiet work, we will sit at the same table without barriers between us. That possibility remains uncertain, but not impossible. For now, I have what matters: a grandson stepping toward a future shaped by justice, a team that became chosen family, and a mission that honors Margaret's memory not through grief, but through action. The foundation we built stands firm, and the foundation we are bound not by perfection, but by courage is stronger still. I did not tell this family story, so anyone would applaud an aging father for staging some theatrical act of revenge. I am not interested in applause. I am not interested in being seen as clever or ruthless or victorious. I am telling it because the cost of the lesson was almost everything I had built across 6 decades. I am telling it because I came within inches of losing my home, my freedom, and my sense of self, not to a stranger, but to someone who once held my hand to cross the street. If there is a single reason this family story exists, it is this: never surrender your judgment, not even when the person asking for it shares your blood. In this family story, I signed papers without reading them. That still stings to admit. I trusted a warm smile and the word "Dad" more than I trusted the discipline that had guided my entire professional life. I believed love was a shield strong enough to protect me from deception. I was wrong. Love is powerful, but it is not a substitute for vigilance. If you take nothing else from what I've shared, take this: read every document before you sign it. Ask questions. Slow the conversation down. Hire your own attorney even if someone insists it's unnecessary. Especially then. Protect your future even when the risk comes wrapped in familiar voices and shared memories. There is a dangerous myth that family loyalty requires blind trust. It doesn't. Loyalty without boundaries is not virtue, it is vulnerability. This family story proves that affection, history, and shared DNA do not erase the need for personal responsibility. Forgiveness has its place. Grace has its place, but neither demands that you stand motionless while someone dismantles your life brick by brick. When people talk about dramatic revenge in grandpa stories, they often imagine anger, retaliation, or spectacle. What I learned is something quieter and far more important. Sometimes what looks like revenge is simply survival. It is drawing a line. It is refusing to be erased. For a long time, I wrestled with the word revenge. I didn't want that label attached to me. But when I look back, what happened was not vengeance, it was protection. It was safeguarding my home, my grandson, and the truth. Many of the most meaningful grandpa stories are not about payback. They are about dignity. They are about older men and women who decide they are not finished yet, who decide they still have a voice worth defending. If my story fits into that category, then let it be known it was never about destroying anyone. It was about refusing to disappear quietly. After everything collapsed, after the court dates and the headlines and the long nights of doubt, I reached a simple conclusion. God did not remove the storm from my path. He did not rewind the clock or undo the betrayal. What he did was give me the strength to stand upright while the wind howled. He placed people in my life at exactly the moment I needed them. Frank with his steady resolve, Martin with his legal precision, Sarah with her unshakable professionalism, and Noah with his courage far beyond his years. That to me is the miracle hidden inside the wreckage. Not the absence of hardship, but the presence of help. If you see yourself anywhere in this family story, if someone is using your age, your kindness, or your trust as leverage, do not wait. Waiting is what nearly destroyed me. Document everything. Keep copies, save messages, write down dates and conversations, seek independent legal advice, speak to law enforcement if necessary. Shame thrives in silence. Protection begins with action. The most meaningful endings in grandpa stories are not those where someone is humiliated in public. They are the ones where a person reclaims control of their own life and refuses to be manipulated again. There is a difference between bitterness and boundaries. I had to learn that the hard way. Margaret used to say, forgiveness is like putting down a heavy rock you have been carrying for miles. She was right. Carrying resentment forever only injures the one holding it. But here is the part she would always add before you put the rock down. Make sure you are no longer standing in the line of fire. Forgiveness does not mean inviting harm back into your home. It does not mean pretending nothing happened. It means releasing hatred while still honoring truth. That is a balance many grandpa stories never show, but it is real and it matters. This family story carved that lesson into my heart more deeply than any professional success ever could. I built bridges and buildings across my career, but this experience forced me to build something else, discernment. I learned that wisdom in later life is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing when to pause, when to question, and when to protect yourself. Love does not require self-destruction. Compassion does not require compliance. And standing up for yourself does not make you cruel, it makes you responsible. If there is one final truth I want to leave with you, it is this: aging does not diminish your right to safety, clarity, and autonomy. Your years are not liabilities. They are proof of survival. You have the right to protect what you have earned. The strongest grandpa stories are not those filled with fury, they are the ones filled with resolve. They remind us that dignity is worth defending at any age. As for me, I am still learning. Some days forgiveness feels possible. Other days it feels distant. Healing is rarely linear, but I no longer confuse love with surrender. I no longer equate silence with peace. And I no longer assume that shared blood guarantees shared values. Those realizations were expensive, but they were necessary. Final note. This narrative contains dramatized elements created to enhance clarity and educational impact. Certain details have been shaped for storytelling purposes. However, the warnings, the principles, and the lessons are real. If this style of storytelling is not for you, that is perfectly fine. Seek content that better aligns with your needs. My only hope is that wherever you are, you remember this. Protect your mind, protect your rights, and never underestimate your own strength.